Well, greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is another episode of Karls Spirits. This is episode 54, and tonight we're going to be tasting a new bottle on the market. It's a special bottle, Old Tub. That's Old Tub Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, and Old Tub is actually the oldest expression of bourbon from Jim Beam. It has been in the production from about 1820. It was introduced by Jim Beam's father, and it was their trademark bourbon all the way up until Prohibition, when the distillery had to close. Following those dry times, when Jim Beam reopened his family distillery, he went with the more generic James Beam bourbon, which was shortened then to Jim Beam. Old Tub has been produced off and on during the last few decades, and it's usually a commemorative half bottle, a 375 mil, only available at the gift shop at the distillery for purchase. Just a few weeks ago, mid-June of this year, it was announced that Jim Beam would produce a full-size bottle. That's a full 750, and it would also be available around the country for a limited time. And according to press releases, Old Tub is an unfiltered, bottled in bond bourbon. Since it is unfiltered, it has not been forced through a very dense filter of carbon. It's not been has not had a cold process to remove the fatty acids. What's left behind, according to these press releases, should be a more full-bodied, authentic flavor of what it would have been like 140 years ago, or 90 years ago during Prohibition, or before Prohibition. So that's their take on Old Tub. And the name itself comes from the idea that, you would go buy bourbon and you would fill it in any old bottle or container or tub that you had, because it was not sold as a bottled product. You bought from a guy who had a barrel in the back of a store, and you filled up your own and took it home. So the Old Tub is kind of commemorative of that idea. Anyway, on to the tasting notes for tonight for Old Tub. It is 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% barley. It is aged 4 years and bottled at 100 proof per the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897. Now, before we move on, that mash bill is the exact same mash bill for the everyday Jim Beam bonded. It's aged for the same amount of time. So in my mind, I'm trying to see what's the real difference here between the standard Beam pour and the Old Tub. Definitely proof is going to make a difference, and then perhaps it's barrel selection from parts of various warehouses. And we have already looked at how even those small factors can change the flavor of a bourbon. So, moving on. In the glass, it's actually very light amber. You can kind of see that in the bottle. It's very reminiscent of a golden hay color or golden straw color. It does have very sticky lines, but they are on the thinner side, I think. But they really stick to the glass. They don't run very much at all. So, nose. I think it has a light aroma to go with that light color. There's definitely some cinnamons and light caramels, but it's really followed by an herbal aroma. And I pick up a lot of honey in this as well. So I really like that honey aroma that really sticks with that cinnamon. And so it's a spicy, sweet aroma that you really get coming off this glass. Wow. Okay, so to start off with, it really has a soft caramel and oak flavors up front, right in the front of the tongue. Mid-tongue, you're getting that baking spice, and then the blast of not hot, a blast of black pepper really kicks in. In fact, the pepper is the most noteworthy note here, and it's quite quite pleasant, actually. I like that. I think most of the pepper note is probably the alcohol, not necessarily the rye. With a low percentage of rye, I would expect a little bit different flavor and a bit different burn. So I really think most of this is more the function of the alcohol. I also get on the edges of my tongue a hint of cereal, and I'm putting that down to its 4-year age statement. I just don't think it's a very developed bourbon yet, and it still has those grainy characteristics. The finish is medium, but it fades pretty quick, and that pepper really hits you on that finish. The back of the taste buds down the throat is a real dark pepper burn. It lingers the longest, that flavor of pepper, of any of those flavors, but it doesn't linger very long, just a few seconds. So on the bottle of Old Tub, it says it's unfiltered for a more robust flavor. And I have to agree with that. It has a robust taste, but for me, the finish fades far too rapidly. I really like the taste. I just wish it could hang around a little bit longer. I think that I can also say that if you probably don't like the standard Jim Beam, you're probably not going to care for this. I really see this more in line of not necessarily Jim Beam standard, but more in line of a Booker's. Now, Booker's would be 126 proof. This is only 100 proof. So obviously doesn't have the proof, but it has a lot of those same flavor notes that Booker's tends to have. I really like the smooth kind of honey caramel up front, and I really think that's a very delicious taste. I wish they could develop that particular taste a little bit more. At 100 proof, I would think this would make a pretty decent cocktail. I'm not a huge cocktail person, so in fact, I'm not a cocktail person. But I can see where a lot of people would like this in a cocktail. I think that proof and that pepper would stand up to the other flavors. Finally, the other thing about this is price. MSRP, when they announced in mid-June that this would be offered around the country, MSRP was $22.95. So that's outstanding. What did I actually pay for it? Locally, I paid $22.99. So I think this is a great price for the port. This definitely wouldn't be my everyday drinker. It would not be my special occasion drinker, but for something, if you wanted just a nice, good pepper in the glass with a little honey in the front, I think this is a great pour for that. So I'm going to ding Old Tub on its lack of nose and lack of finish, and I'm going to give it a 3.75 Karl rating. That's 3.75 Karl stars on Old Tub from Jim Beam. $22.99, not a bad price for not a bad bourbon. Guys, I hope everybody's well. Stay safe, peace, and happy pours.